Is President Biden softening his anti-oil stance ahead of the 2024 election? And why is Tesla facing so many investigations from the Justice Department? Yahoo Finance highlights these stories and more for Inside Washington.
The first major leadership test for Speaker Johnson is underway. House Republicans have introduced a plan to provide $14.3 billion in aid to Israel by cutting funding to the IRS. The bill also separates funding to Israel from the Biden administration's broader emergency funding request, notably omitting support for Ukraine. With more on why this is worth keeping on your radar, we've got Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman. Hey, Rick.
Hey guys, right. So what the House Republicans are doing is they're saying, yes, we will agree to $14 billion in aid for Ukraine, but we think we need to cover that cost. That money needs to come from somewhere. So where's it going to come from? And they're saying, let's just take it from the IRS budget. In other words, let's ease up on tax cheats. That is a pretty weird position, and Democrats control the Senate, and there's no way they're going to agree to that. So this is kind of a statement of principle by House Republicans. It's not going to pass in that form. So the question is, what happens next? This will all go into negotiations at some point between the Senate and the House. There is a sense of urgency here, just because this war is happening in front of the world's eyes in real time. And people in Congress do want to demonstrate, robust support for Israel. So I think they're going to have to move on this fairly soon. Just not clear what the compromises are going to be. I would point out that what they also did in the House is they took out aid for Ukraine. They're saying, let's deal with that separately. The Biden administration says, nope, we want to deal with all this together. And that is the position of Democrats in the Senate as well. So negotiations underway.
So, Rick, speaking of negotiation, talk to us about what this means for budget negotiations as we get closer to the government funding deadline.
Well, business is underway again in the House. I mean, they are back to work after almost a month off when Republicans didn't have a speaker. So I think what we're looking for, so what's going to happen with the budget? There probably will be another temporary funding bill when the current one runs out. And then what Speaker Mike Johnson says he wants to do is he wants to do this the right way, fund the government through the 12 appropriations bills, which this is inside baseball for people who follow Congress, but more appropriate budgeting processes. So this is probably budgeting is probably going to get kicked into 2024, and a pretty good chance we're not going to have a shutdown. If we do get to a crunch time again, it's going to come either in January or perhaps April of 2024. So we don't have to worry about that for now. But I think what the markets want is they just want to see the government functioning and not have to worry about this. So I think that's what the market is going to get in November. Whether it's going to continue in 2024 is a totally different question.
This is true. We continue to come back to that kind of worry about what happens with negotiations, with the budget, time and time again, and takes this right to the edge every single time. All right, Rick Newman with what's on his radar. Thanks so much, Rick.
Well, today, President Biden issued a sweeping executive order regarding the safe and secure use of artificial intelligence, a wide-scale effort to impose nationwide standards on the fast-moving technology. The order includes calls for new standards around AI safety and security, legislation protecting Americans' privacy, and supporting workers as AI changes workplaces. We're joined by Arati Prabhakar, who is the Director of the Office of Science and Technology at the Technology Policy at the White House. Arati, great to have you here with us today. First and foremost, what are the key elements of this particular executive order that perhaps could shape where artificial intelligence is in the workplace, is in schools, is in the people of America's fingertips on a day in, day out basis?
It's great to be here with you today. Thanks for the chance to talk about this. It's a really big day at the White House. As you said, the president signing an executive order today that is the most significant action any government anywhere in the world has taken on artificial intelligence. Very much to your point, the president's been clear from the beginning of this work that AI is one of the most consequential technologies of our time. And he's also been clear from the beginning of our work with him on this that we've got a job, and that job is to make sure that we manage its risks so that we can seize its tremendous benefits. And exactly as you said, AI is already in people's lives today. It's in our work lives, it's in our personal lives, and we know that that's going to accelerate with the new advances that are coming. This executive order is about making sure that we lay a foundation so that we get AI right.
So, Rathi, how does this executive order do just that? What are some of the steps that you're taking, the priorities that you have laid out that helps to mitigate some of those risks?
Yeah, again, a whole series of different actions. The EO is broad, the executive order is broad because the technology and its implications and its applications are broad. One dimension, a really important one, focuses on safety. So how do we know when more powerful models are being developed? There are provisions in this executive order so that the government will be notified when companies build the next generation of extremely powerful AI technologies. We'll get access as well to their independent testing that they do on those models. That's important for awareness. But it's also about how the safety of cyber systems or how biological technologies are developed with AI. There are provisions here that allow us to get better at cybersecurity, that allow us to have a better handle on potentially dangerous biological work that's going on. That's all in the safety category. There are also provisions in this executive order that are about bolstering privacy. For example, provisions that focus on how the government uses data that it buys from data brokers. This is important to every individual's privacy. There are provisions about making sure we don't embed bias in algorithms. That matters if you're getting a loan. It matters if you're trying to get a job. It matters if you're involved in the criminal justice system. And in all of those areas, we want to make sure, and this EO takes the actions now to get us on a path where bias isn't going to get embedded. That's just a sample. There's much more that's about supporting workers as this technology comes into their lives, making sure government uses AI in powerful but responsible ways, and that we do the testing, the development of the technology, the standards that allow us all to know that AI is safe and working for us.
And Rathi, when it comes to the executive order that's been laid out, it has been criticized from some industry players, but also from some lawmakers as well. Senator Ted Cruz has been one of the vocal opponents, I guess you could say, or maybe one of the people that have been raising some of the concerns. He said that this executive order undermines exactly what AI technologies promise to do: create efficiencies, spur economic growth, and improve our lives. What's your response to that, some of the criticism that this executive order is getting?
Well, I've been in the science and technology and innovation business for my entire professional life, all the way back to when my hair was still black. That's a lot of decades. And what I'll tell you is that innovators and technologists, we're trying to do this work to achieve the great aspirations that we have as a country and as a world. But sometimes we get a little enraptured of the technology. And what has to come along with the technology is really thoughtful ways to make sure that we're using it in safe, really responsible ways that really reflect our values as a country. And if you step back and you think about it, every country in the world is trying to use artificial intelligence in a way that expresses their values. They're trying to build the future that they care about. The president has been clear from the beginning that we are living in a time in which American leadership in the world requires American leadership in AI. And that's about getting it right for the American people, and in doing that, being a beacon for the world. That's what this executive order takes a great step forward on doing.
Rathi, a portion of this executive order talks about supporting workers and addresses how generative AI and artificial intelligence more broadly is impacting jobs and workplaces. And also, at the same time, the same administration is also very much in support of unions and the ability to negotiate and make sure that the workers can identify and address where AI might be a companion or an augmented intelligence that they're working alongside, while at the same time protecting their earnings. But you think about the headcount that also could be impacted at many of these workplaces too. I wonder how the administration is thinking about that calculus and the kind of labor force participation that could be impacted where there are, in this case and even today, negotiations that net out for auto manufacturing facilities where it's known that there's going to be more robotics, it's known that there's going to be more artificial intelligence, and what impact that could mean for the totality of workers that are in that industry?
The work here starts exactly where the president always starts, and that is with deep respect for the dignity of work and workers. And he's been a tremendous champion for workers in every area. That's reflected in this executive order as well. And if, again, step back and think about what's happening. We've had generations of automation that have dramatically changed work. What's happening with AI, and especially generative AI, chatbots and image generators. Now, a lot of professions that no one ever thought were going to be subject to automation or having machines be able to contribute meaningfully. All of a sudden, we've got a whole new raft of professions where people are thinking about this, and we're starting to see some changes. So this is a pivotal time to get this right as this new generation of AI technology comes out and breaks into even more fields. So how do we do that? Well, first we start by understanding what it's capable of doing, and then taking very thoughtful action about how we can make this technology allow workers to do more and to earn more, rather than using this technology to surveil workers, to hollow out jobs, or to eliminate jobs. And we know the history shows us it can come out either way, and we're going to be very clear that we're taking the actions to get us on the right path for every worker in America.
Dorothy, when it comes to workers, specifically AI talent, what exactly the U.S. needs to do in order to make sure that they have the employees that they need, that's skilled appropriately for the AI revolution, and what the future of artificial intelligence looks like? What are some of the priorities that you see the Biden administration doing or needs to do in order to make sure that that worker need is met here in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the technology all day long. We know that big things happen with great people. And so that's important for the country as a whole. And it's important for the talent that we're going to need inside of government as well. And this executive order has provisions on both of those topics. One set of provisions is about making it easier to get great people to come into the country from other parts of the world. That's a place where, of course, we've always wanted to be a beacon, and for decades, if not centuries, we have been a beacon for great people around the world to come to the United States and to pursue their dreams and to help build this country. We want to make sure that that keeps happening in this AI generation, and so there are provisions about that. And then turning to the important need to get great talents of all different sorts in public service. I've had the great privilege of spending half of my professional life in the private sector, in companies and as an investor, but also half of my professional life in government. And I can tell you that for people who are passionate about getting this right for the country, about achieving the big things that are possible with AI, one of the most satisfying things that you can do is to come contribute to your country by joining in this work. And so we'll be taking active measures as well to recruit and find great talent to move this forward inside of government.
Arathi Prabhakar, we thank you so much for taking the time to join us here this morning on Yahoo Finance, Director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy at the White House. Arathi, thanks.
It is official. Representative Mike Johnson is the new Republican Speaker of the House. And with less than a month to work out a budgeting deal to avoid a government shutdown, the new leader has a lot to get working on. But who is this congressman from Louisiana? How did he get here? And what does it mean for the House? Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman joins us with what's keeping him up at night and what's worth keeping on your radar. Rick, sorry, I added in a little line there, but I imagine that this has been keeping you up at night a fair bit.
Well, I get some sleep now that there's actually a speaker. You don't have to follow the speaker follies every day, but we'll see how long that lasts. So Mike Johnson is more conservative than the last speaker, Kevin McCarthy. He wants to cut spending, along with some of the other hardline Republicans. He has opposed aid to Ukraine. And we're going to find out within a few weeks whether he becomes a little more pragmatic and a little more moderate now that he actually has to get business done in the House. He probably will be, because when you're a lesser known member of Congress, it's easier to make controversial votes. I mean, for example, he's an election denier. He he voted against certifying President Biden after the 22 election, which Biden obviously won. And he didn't catch a lot of flack for that. I mean, he wasn't one of the main people either for or against the cause. But now, reporters in the Washington Press Corps are asking him about it. He has to answer. He has to answer for it. He hasn't. So that's the main question. I mean, what we've seen during the last month is that the Trump or the hard right faction in the Republican Party, it sort of has blocking power or veto power, if you will. They can stop stuff from happening, but there aren't enough of them to actually make their own agenda happen. So that's where we are. And look, in order to pass budgeting bills in the House, get aid for Ukraine, for Israel, these other things, parties have to compromise. I mean, this is the way Congress works. Parties do have to compromise. So that's the big question. Is he going to find a way to compromise with Democrats because he's going to need some of their votes? Or is he just going to be kowtowing to this small but veto minority that Republicans have, which means he could end up defenestrated just like Kevin McCarthy did by some point next year?
Rick, you mentioned that he was one of the election deniers, just in terms of where he has stood on other policy issues, how that then could potentially shape what we see coming out of the House here over the coming year. I guess, how do you see that potentially playing out and how that could then maybe ultimately affect in some way 2024?
He's extremely conservative on social issues, such as abortion and things related to that. That doesn't affect markets so much. I guess the thing that our audience will want to care about is he does want aggressive government spending cuts, more than Democrats and Republicans agreed to last June when we had that fight over the debt ceiling. So is he really going to push for that? And remember, Democrats control the Senate. So even if he gets Republican legislation approved in the House, a Democratic-controlled Senate is not going to approve it. And then what do? I mean, the Democrat-controlled Senate is not going to sign off on aggressive spending cuts. So are we going to have some kind of gridlock? Are we just going to have repetitive threats of a government shutdown, and then everybody has to scramble to figure out what does that mean? Probably doesn't hurt markets too bad for just a couple of weeks, but what if it goes longer? Or will we have some semblance of normalcy in Washington for a little while? I think that's the big unanswered question at this point.
Certainly is the unanswered question. All right, Rick, always great to get your perspective. And now we're going to let you maybe catch up on a little more sleep, like Brad alluded to at the top there. Rick, thanks so much.
It's been a busy few weeks in the energy sector with Chevron and Exxon buying up competitors in those double-digit billion-dollar deals. This power move comes as fossil fuel companies have raked in profits under President Biden, despite his green energy agenda aiming to push more focus on renewables. So is Biden losing to big oil? Rick Newman has been following this. How should we be framing this, Rick, from a political perspective?
First, just a couple of facts, Julie. Exxon and Chevron both had their most profitable year ever in their history in 2022. And for each of those companies, their stock hit a record high shortly after that. And they've just been raking in cash since Joe Biden has been president. Now, that is a coincidence. That is not a result of any policy Biden has put out there. In fact, as everybody knows, Joe Biden favors green energy and renewables, and he signed the most aggressive green energy incentives into law in 2022 in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. And yet, fossil fuels are thriving under President Biden. So, to me, the important takeaway is everybody thinks that the president signs a piece of paper and it can either benefit this industry or kill this industry. And it just is not that way. I mean, the fossil fuel industry, Exxon, Chevron, the companies they're buying, they're doing great because of what's happening in the market. And Biden is not stopping that. I think President Biden has learned a super important lesson during the last 3 years, which is that as much as you might wish, we could burn less carbon in order to reduce global warming and get climate change under control. We are dramatically dependent on this energy, and we're going to be for a long time. And you were talking in the previous segment about this idea of peak oil. We're not even at peak oil. Peak oil is when global demand for oil is likely to hit its maximum level and then gradually come down. And we may not hit that for another 10 years or even 15 years or so. So fossil fuels are here to stay, and it's no accident that these companies are doing so well.
And Rick, as you rightfully pointed out, President Biden, listen, he's gone after big oil before, gone after Exxon in particular. Why do you say that he's learned his lesson, though, Rick? You don't think that maybe these kind of headlines draw him in again, try to politicize this a bit?
Because of gasoline prices, simple, and to a lesser extent, winter heating costs. Biden got completely burned by gasoline prices in 2022 that hit $5 per gallon, the highest they've ever been in the United States. And it's clear that the Biden administration has gas price PTSD because they are going around the world doing everything they can think of to try to make sure there's going to be plenty of oil on the market. They just released some sanctions on Venezuela to coax, Venezuela barely puts much oil into the global market, even though it has so much oil. So there's going to be a little more Venezuelan oil coming next year. The Biden administration is doing that to keep gas prices down because they think that if gas prices surge again in 2024, when Biden's running for re-election, he'll lose. They got scorched by that in 2022. They're scared to death it's going to happen again. And you are not going to hear Joe Biden trashing fossil fuels the way he did as a presidential candidate in 2019 and 2020, because he knows not only do we desperately need them in the economy, he desperately needs a lot of fossil fuels on the market if he wants to get reelected in 2024.
Things aren't getting any easier over at Tesla. Worse than expected earnings, issues over the Cybertruck, and now more investigations. Elon Musk's company revealing its automated driving systems are under deeper federal scrutiny. The EV maker revealed in an SEC filing the Justice Department is demanding info about the systems and a range of company actions. Yahoo Finance's Alexis Keenan has the details. Hey, Alexis.
Hi, Rochelle. Yes. So we knew back in January that the Justice Department had asked Tesla for more information on its autopilot and also its full self-driving systems. But in this new quarterly report, we're learning that the probes are quite a bit wider in terms of subject matter and also a lot more demanding of Tesla. And that's because the prosecutors have subpoenaed Tesla. So in terms of they're not asking for this information, they're telling Tesla that the company is required to hand over information. Now take a look at those range of issues there. It's not just autopilot and full self-driving features. The Justice Department also asking for information on personal benefits, related parties, vehicle range, and personnel decisions, they say. Now, Tesla offered no additional detail in the report about these probes, other than to say, to the company's knowledge, no government agency in any ongoing investigation has concluded that any wrongdoing has occurred. Now, that leaves us to some speculation. But what we do know is that as for the vehicle range, a number of news organizations have reported that Tesla's stated mileage range for its vehicles tend to not hold up in real life. And as for personal benefits, in August, the Wall Street Journal had a report saying that the Justice Department was looking into whether company funds from Tesla were used to create and design a glass house for Elon Musk. Now, last year also, Reuters had a report saying that the Justice Department was investigating Tesla's past self-driving claims. Though the company does maintain on its website that autopilot is not a self-driving system and that features that it offers like auto braking and lane correction, that those are meant to reduce driver workload, but they're not meant to have someone without their hands on the wheel. They say they're meant for fully attentive drivers is the way they say it. But the big takeaway here, Rochelle, I think that these expanded probes really add to this rough week that Tesla has had after its third quarter earnings call last week, and also to the existing investigations that we know about with the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration. Those date all the way back to 2016. So a lot on Tesla's plate this week, and certainly an expanded and deeper range of probes here into the company and its practices.